Hello, friends. Welcome back to 1D10T Does Stuff. And I'm the 1D10T in charge, Trevor Stewart 1308. And today we will be watching some more videos on redlining and black health disparities. Although I don't think we'll so much be watching videos about the two of them together. What we're trying to do is link the two things. Although we have, in past shows, managed to do some of that. Our Tuesday streams are usually about disparities in health outcomes for black people. We are gaining context around the idea that the fact that marginalized people face a, at best, lost my wording here for a second. At best, marginalized people face indifference from the medical institutions in the United States. And at worst, they face malignant oppression, we'll say. It's what we're really drilling down into is what I think is the clear and present danger to black women, specifically in our mental and behavioral health institutions in the United States. But we're gaining context around that, which means looking at things like redlining and black health disparities, as well as the concepts of where modern health and beauty standards come from, things like that. And of course, I'm just an idiot, so that's part of why we're going through this as a discussion, this sort of a co-learning thing. Before I get into any more of that, though, let me do today's ad read. Today's pre-rolls brought to you by The Hidden Leaf, downtown Charlottesville, Virginia, on the Downtown Mall, 105 West Main Street, above the Bricks, Suite 200. A great place to go with some great buds to get some great buds, eh, bud? And the only thing better than their bud is their customer service. Also, they have the lowest prices in town, according to my own personally highly biased research, by which I mean I was incredibly high when I did my biased research. Don't forget to check the website for times and events such as Frosty Fridays, where you can find our other two sponsors, Firehouse, where there's smoke, there's Firehouse, and Kush Gang, purveyor of fine edibles and drinkables. The website is thehiddenleafcville.com. That's thehiddenleaf, CVILLE, all one word, .com. Note of disclaimer: we are going to be discussing some socially and politically charged issues, and I will be expressing opinions. Those opinions belong to me and or the expresser of the opinions, and or possibly the channel and or the parent company, but do not necessarily belong to any of our advertisers, including Hidden Leaf, Kush Gang, and Firehouse. There we go. I believe that's the ad read. So now, last week we were watching the Black Health Disparities Go Back to Slavery documentary from Twin Cities PBS. and we will finish watching that today. Yeah. And possibly discuss a couple of other... possibly watch and discuss a couple more of these videos. Let me get this lit and we'll dive right in. I do feel like maybe I should be discussing the imminent end of the government shutdown this week, but I really want to wait and see how it plays out, and we usually discuss that sort of stuff on our Saturday stream/show. So I'm gonna leave it alone for now. With the exception of saying that, you know, hopefully the good that comes out of whatever is about to happen is that people get their food benefits back. It is... the lack of SNAP benefits has been really not okay on a lot of the lower income and even some of the middle income populace of the United States. So I will have more and deeper opinions about this later. Well, all right, let's get into it. Without further ado.
SoberLink helped me provide accountability. There's the ability to provide loved ones and your job with active reports while you're doing it. With my legal troubles, you know, I was on the verge of losing my job, and
journey towards affordable health care is a long...
I have feelings about that commercial we're about to watch. I think that it is probably a good thing to provide at-home sobriety checks, you know, to a device that I feel a little uncool with anybody making money off of alcohol addiction. Like, that's not okay, folks. You know, alcohol addiction is a very difficult disease to cope with, and being sold something is a little like, I don't know, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Feels a little scummy. I also think that the amount of data that's being collected by that thing and is goodness gracious. And then it comes to, who's that data going to? Who gets that data? Does that data end up free for law enforcement to use? Car insurance companies? You know, if you're doing it to quit drinking on your own, then it could end up making your life a lot more difficult. It just seems, something about it seems slimy to me. All right.
And difficult one that goes back to the progressive era.
Remarkable thing about health insurance and the clarity that we've had in these United States about how important healthcare is. We harken all the way back
healthcare.
To Theodore Roosevelt.
What they're talking about is the sort of community organizing that Black people performed to basically make their own health insurance conglomerate. I remember. I was vaguely paying attention last night. I was paying attention. I just have a terrible memory.
In 1909, Roosevelt organized the first White House conference on the health of dependent children. But with the progressive era fading and with the start of World War I, federal efforts on health care faltered.
His cousin later, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, pressed for universal health care. He ended up coming away with Social Security.
FDR had to remove health care coverage to assure passage of the Social Security Bill in 1935. He tried for health care reform again in the late 30s, but the decline of the New Deal and the outbreak of World War II ended these efforts.
Harry Truman pressed for universal health care and was unable to achieve it. Subsequently, we had efforts by Lyndon Johnson and Nixon, William Jefferson Clinton, and Hillary, all to achieve health care. None were able to achieve.
Okay. I do want to talk about Hillary Clinton and her attempt to achieve some form of health care equity. And this is where personal politics comes into play. I voted for Hillary Clinton on personal politics because she personally got me health care. This thing that they're about to gloss over, she spearheaded a movement, thing to get public hospitals to have a sliding scale for care. Well, not for care, but for cost of care. And in that sliding scale, I qualified for free health care for a long time. I was so far below the poverty line that I qualified for free health care. And that personal politics, that came into play when she was running for president for me. Every time I think about the fact that I actually finally got my cystic fibrosis diagnosis, that was because Hillary Clinton stepped up to the plate, and when she was first lady, stepped up to the plate and did something. And I saw that come into play in Charlottesville through the university hospital. I saw a lot of people getting health care because they could afford it because of the sliding scale. So she was not ineffective, but she was not universally effective. Also, I just wanted to explain why those were my personal politics there.
98 years of struggle in this country towards universal health care was unable to achieve it. So the work of President Obama to bring forward health care is a source of pride for us.
I'm not the first president to take up this cause, but I am determined to be the last.
How hollow those words
no matter what side
sound
of the
now.
aisle, improving healthcare was important to everyone. It was just how you get there.
And we're going to sign this bill.
More challenges remained after the Affordable Care Act became law. From Supreme Court decisions to the development of the online marketplaces, the process continued to be contentious and controversial.
What we're going to do today.
Let's also remember that the ACA was really mostly what the Republicans had proposed. It really doesn't resemble the bill that Obama was looking for. So a lot of the problems with the ACA were built into it by Republicans at the time. It was, yeah. So let's just keep that in mind too.
Is create your account on the Minister site and complete an application and submit it.
But now it's more about people and less about politics. It's about making sure everyone can access these marketplaces to get the best health care insurance for themselves and their families.
I am Tamika Tody, Menshore Navigator Coordinator for Stair Step Foundation.
I was sent a letter to reapply my insurance
I like his
by
earrings.
computer.
Major's concern was he didn't have access to computer or internet at home. I said, come on in, Major, we'll sit down and we'll take care of this. So in this section, we'll add the other people that are in your household. Okay. He had a couple questions along the way, so I was able to answer those questions. We have had some glitches, and the nice thing about the tool is there's so much support. If there's a case where online's not available, we can still do a paper application. So it's really a nice support community. There's always backup. That is the process all done.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you.
When we're able to see this positive change and see individuals getting their household covered. And it's also nice to see when there's people that might have been paying these huge premiums and deductibles and had these pre-existing issues, seeing them having affordable coverage. It's really nice.
Because you get used to.
We are going to stop and talk about the government shutdown for just a second. Because we do want to talk about why the Democrats were working so hard. Why the Democrats had decided to shut down the government is because these benefits from the ACA are about to get greatly reduced because at the end of the year, a lot of funding for it is going to disappear, and the prices are going to go up. Deductible prices, the other price that I can't remember right now, the buy-in price, all of it is going to go up. And the Democrats had shut down the government, and it's still shut down technically right now. It just needs to go through the Senate, and then the president needs to sign off, and we'll be back up and running. But the Democrats had shut down the government, or no, the House has to sign off on it. Trying to preserve what little is left of the ACA, of this universal health care, and, you know, the thing is, 7 Democrats and an independent flipped and voted with the Republicans to reopen the government for the promise that at some point in the future the Republicans might be willing to hear the proposal for extending the ACA benefits. And it feels like a bag of magic beans, buddy. It feels like it feels like they gave up all of their bargaining power for absolutely nothing but some words. And words from the Republican Party don't mean anything, as we have seen. There is no honor there. There's no ethics. There's no codes of behavior. They just do. They do what they want. They tell you what you want to hear, and they just... So, again, as we hear this now, it feels very hollow and worrisome.
Forking out that close to $1,000 a month. And but when the numbers came up, and it was a revelation, and it was a blessing. It was a life changing. I have kids in college, and so 3 in fact, and so those monies can be used elsewhere. So I'm grateful. It's not enough for me to benefit, and I think that the church is an incredible venue or avenue through which this story should be told. That we have a responsibility to empower people, our people, and people in general.
We have been setting up mass community enrollment events in churches. We answer any questions that individuals might have, and then we actually do enrollment right there on site. So we're enrolling people right there at those events.
We hosted one Mentor navigation session after our Sunday worship, where we had several navigators come out and assist folks with getting signed up. And it was an awesome time, and it was good to be able to be involved in helping people get the health care that they need.
Without that trusted voice, we found that in our community, people won't step forward. People won't get engaged. They won't sign up.
Our events are open to the public. They're held in churches around the community, but they're open to the surrounding neighborhoods. So we're reaching everyone. I remember sitting with a white male coming into a little Baptist church, him just kind of looking around at all the children running, you know, and just being amazed and welcomed and helped. I understand the fear that can come along when you don't have coverage for your family. And I understand the bills that can pile up because you're still doing those things that you have to do to protect your family.
We had 2 that were off to college, and we had 3 that remained at home. And we had to make some real decisions because both parents being outside of the house at the exact same time with childcare for 3 children becomes a little challenging. And my wife could not, we had to have surgery for her. And I mean major surgery about 8 weeks ago. And in the process of having major surgery about 8 weeks ago, when we first signed up for Mentor, as a man, as a husband, as a father, it was a very proud moment to say, you know, honey, children, we have this insurance, and Dad was able to get this done.
The pride that he can have in signing his family up, especially for the men in the community, to be able to kind of have that as an example and be like, yeah, you know what, that's great. If it worked for him, it'll work for me. We are in 40 years now of hip-hop culture. Really, when it kind of got started, it was all just about the self-expression, self-reliance. But at the same time, now that we're at 40 years, we see a lot of the pioneers of the culture who are aging, who are looking at different health issues. Cool DJ Herc, who is one of the pioneers of the culture, back in 2011, he actually ended up having kidney stones. Of course, no health insurance. This is something now that the masses of the hip-hop community are beginning to start to look at, but they're not going to just sign up blindly. So there has to be an awareness campaign. There has to be some outreach. There has to be community engagement.
The Invincibles think they're young and they're going to live forever. And it's just good to inform them of the importance of health insurance and coverage. And you want to have it and not need it versus need it and not have it. It's important to take.
Hey, Maddie. This is a national problem. We just need universal health care. Yes, exactly. It is very much a national problem, and we do very much need universalized health care. We're one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have some sort of nationalized health care. And that is really backwards. I understand that we are a capitalist nation above all. I get that, you know, that it's not just capitalism, but extractive capitalism. And because of the extractive nature of the capitalism, you know, anywhere there's room for someone to make money, someone's going to try and make money. And our system is designed for that to be okay. But so and that's predatory capitalism. Yes, predatory capitalism. And that, that to me, what really shows through there is how that was upheld by insurance companies suing for possible loss of revenue because of the ACA, and and winning and making things like winning things like the individual mandate being unconstitutional because the insurance companies were losing money. Or that might not have been the exact order of that, but it was something similar. And if this were free market, if this were a true free market economy, free market capitalism, companies wouldn't be able to sue for loss of income. Especially for things like that. You'd be stuck with the fact that your industry is no longer viable. We also would not have gotten bank bailouts. Too big to fail wouldn't be a thing. Failure would be the way that you knew you'd done something wrong. But that is not the type of capitalism in which we live. We live in a predatory capitalism with no guardrails, or with very few guardrails. And the guardrails that are in place are being very quickly eroded. And that's, I think that the medical insurance industry is where that is really visible.
Care of yourself and have access to all of those health resources and do the preventative steps versus the catastrophic care.
There's a writer who said we're all just temporarily able-bodied. And so if we think about healthcare in that way, and we think about preventative care, getting into that system and thinking about yourself as actually doing a social good by being part of a healthcare system is another way of thinking about it.
We can be the model
Hey, just me,
for the
Crystal.
nation
Happy Tuesday.
about how to get health care for everybody and how to get the community healthy.
The reality is we're in this together. This is a life-changing thing, and has been a life-changing thing for a lot of people. And I think ultimately will change the world in which we live.
I think the biggest thing is having the know of who started this process and why it began.
Doing pretty
and
well
why we
today.
have to
Hope
arrive
you're
to
doing
this
well
place.
too.
We understand how important healthcare is. If we understand that history of the mutual aid societies and the African American health insurance companies, that we might move from a place of disadvantage to a place of inclusion and respect. I know that Absalom Jones and Richard Allen thrill to think that President Barack Obama thought enough about the importance of universal health care that he staked his entire political capital on achieving it. Glory to God, 2010, he was able to stroke the pen.
And about 6 years later, Trump took a Trump-sized dump on it. So, we're gonna let the we're gonna go ahead and let the credits roll just because it's polite. Uh, I do like that this documentary finished on mutual aid healthcare insurance systems.
Discovered Truth, A Healthcare Journey is a Minnesota Partnership co-production of MNsure on the web at mnsure.org, the Stair Step Foundation, and Twin Cities Public Television.
So yeah, I like that last one ended with mutual aid and health insurance. That very hopeful sort of tone at the end. But again, this is from. It was posted 4 years ago. It was made in 2014. That explains a lot. It really, seeing what had happened and then knowing what was gonna happen, I feel like really is the sort of really shows the systemic racism in place. Some of this was down to individual racisms, some of this was down to individual racisms from Trump and from the people around him, but a lot of the ability to take away the ACA and undermine everything that Obama worked hard for, really, I feel like came out of this systemic racism, this propaganda of systemic racism that painted the picture that the ACA was only benefiting a certain subsection of the population, and the lie that it was making healthcare way more expensive. These tactics come out of and blend seamlessly with the systemic racism and have had the desired effect of reducing healthcare for the most marginalized. All right, I'm having a hard time fully pulling this thought together, so we're gonna move on to this video by Stanford CME, Racial Disparities in Mental Health. Yeah.
This video covers the topics of implicit bias and racial health disparities in maternal health, as guided by the 5-Minute Moment for Racial Justice.
Maternal, not mental.
The 5-Minute Moment for Racial Justice.
I apologize, folks. That is due to my own dyslexia. It is. Yeah. So racial disparities in maternal health. which I could see being incredibly important, because if maternal health is not good, then the rest of the child's life is going to be affected. Maternal health seems almost foundational to the continued good health of a person. I mean, it's not the only thing. Obviously, continued health is important.
Justice is a teaching framework to promote health equity and racial justice in medical education. The framework relies on a 5-step approach that discusses the learning and clinical context, the current standard around a medical diagnostic or treatment, the historical roots and bias of that standard, contributions to health disparities, and steps.
Let's take a moment and notice that this is from an accredited U.S. medical school. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I'm pretty sure Stanford is a pretty solid medical school. So, I do feel like we are probably getting pretty trustable information here. I had a brief moment of almost panic when I saw the animations that popped up, because PragerU uses similar animations. So does Crash Course. And to be clear, you cannot trust anything PragerU says at all, ever. I feel like Crash Course, on the other hand, usually pretty solid. I mean, the sciences and maths and stuff is all, really solid. I feel like the social stuff probably want to remember that it's not in depth. It's all AI. I'm guessing not. Not considering how old this is. PragerU might be. Crash Course, probably not. And this, probably not. Just because they're old enough that AI wasn't quite up to it at the time. But that is also just a guess on my part.
To take to practice more equitably. This framework offers educators a structured way to talk about this topic in a concise manner across commonly encountered clinical scenarios. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to describe maternal health disparities experienced by Black mothers compared to mothers from other races, and recognize how structural racism and implicit bias contribute to racial health disparities in maternal morbidity and mortality.
A 32-year-old Black female who is 30 weeks pregnant presents to the OB clinic for a third trimester visit. This is her first pregnancy and first visit with her doctor during her pregnancy because she has had difficulty establishing care. She states that she thinks everything is going well. She has had healthy weight gain until the past 2 weeks. She noticed her weight gain has accelerated and reports shortness of breath and leg swelling that has limited her physical activities. She tells the learner physician that something just doesn't feel right. The learner physician evaluates her and tells her,
weight gain and swelling can be normal in late pregnancy. Try to elevate your legs and come back for your follow-up in 2 weeks.
This is a common scenario.
Yo, Paradoxa Beast. You were so happy, but your whole day was ruined by an American YouTuber? Alright, I'll bite. Which American YouTuber, and how did they ruin your day? Being an American and a YouTuber, it might have been me. I also want to stop and say real quick, like, those three symptoms would immediately have me checking for edema. Just because I have a vague memory that those symptoms are associated with edema, and that's a terrifying thing when you're pregnant. I mean, it's a terrifying thing, but it's incredibly dangerous to a pregnant woman. But what we're probably going to see is that the physician doesn't pay attention to the black woman. I mean, what we have just seen is that the physician not only doesn't really pay attention to her, but dismisses her, which is a normal thing across all the healthcare, all the medical disciplines, not just OBGYN. It's, you know, and when they popped up the graphic, my first thought was, you know, why is a black woman going to a white man as an OBGYN? I mean, I'm not saying white men can't do the job. I'm just saying they are statistically not gonna have the sensitivity needed by a pregnant black woman. They have no shared experience other than, you know, breathing air and drinking water. There's not always an option. Yes, there is not always an option. I am aware, and I think, and that's one of the things I want to rail against, is there should be. There should be. We should have a system in place to have the professionals, especially medical professionals, that fit into the needs of the people who come to see them. I was just on Discord talk with some friends, and an American said, "Have you celebrated the poop festival?" At first I didn't understand what he was saying, but I received this message from others too. I'm an Indian. I don't know what the heck a poop festival is. When I researched, MF YouTuber named Tyler Oliveira uploaded a video of India's cow poop festival, and when I researched it, I found out that it happens in a single village, and when I checked his X, I saw, oh, dude. My heart breaks, man. That really sucks. And I'd like to take a moment to talk about, okay, I'm pretty sure that one village isn't the only place, like, in the world. I have no idea about India, but I'm pretty sure that there were buffalo chip celebrations in North America for a long time. 2 million views. Oh. That's unfortunate. I'm not gonna watch the video because I'm not gonna add to that. Buffalo chips, cow pats, very important for the environment, incredibly useful, very important for, you know, all sorts of stuff. However, we shouldn't be making fun of anybody else's festivals. I mean, except for, you know, pagans like me making fun of Christians stealing my Christmas. But, and just me, Crystal, it's not you. I'm used to racist comments, but this was too much. I believe it. I believe it. You know, there's no... It's not even a national festival. It happens in a single village. I mean, exactly. It's really taking a very small cross-section of a population and expanding it to the whole population and saying, see, look, I think we covered that tactic in our logical fallacies series, but I can't remember what it's called. But it really is just, I feel like it makes it doubly abhorrent in that, you know, even if it was a national festival, don't make fun of it. Don't be a dick. But it's not. It's a single village. So you are really just picking on this one group of people, this one very small group of people who are just living their lives, man. Why you gotta be like that? Like, I agree with some YouTubers who showed dirty places in India, but they have crossed the line with this one. There are dirty places in America. There are, I mean, he also shared that he might die if he didn't get proper medical care. What a juxtaposition of, you know, concepts there. Like, make fun of these people for living their lives and doing what they do, but also, I'm dying. It's very... That split screen is just uncomfortable. You know, there are... And when we read Inflamed, The Anatomy of Deep Medicine, by Rupa Marya and Raj Patel, there were some portions talking about specifically, because we were looking at medical stuff, they were talking about the people who burn trash for a living. Yeah, for real, Maddie. There are people who love to profit off of racism and bigotry. And so, yeah, there are some very dirty places. There are very dirty places all over the world. And it is... I think it's a misrepresentation to focus attention on the dirty aspects of one place. When I shared with some other good people, they said that Tyler Oliveira, or that dude, Oliveria, dyslexia, Trev, get there. That dude have been defaming many countries. He was facing his downfall, so I think he's made the video because anti-India videos are trending now. They really are. They really are. I just saw a Saji Sharma video about how long does it take for TikTok to try to send me down an anti-Indian pipeline. And it was pretty quick. It was pretty quick. It's easy to say ignore them, but they're pushing that narrative solely to get those reactions. Yeah. Yeah, Saji Sharma is... I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and I'm not just a fan because he's another Virginian. I'm not just a fan because he lives close-ish. I'm also not just a fan because I feel represented by somebody else on YouTube who has a stammer. I think that he has a dry wit that I find very sharp, and I really enjoy. Yeah. Plus, I love when he does his redneck character. That MAGA character that he does sometimes goes out in public. It's just priceless. Priceless. I like YouTubers who show good side as well as bad side of a country. YouTubers like small-brained Americans, Tyler Oliveira. I think I got it that time. And Bald and Bankrupt show only bad side for views. Bald and Bankrupt uploaded a new video today in India. I don't know Bald and Bankrupt. I'm assuming they're also racist, gross content. We're watching from my YouTube channel, my own personal. It's both my personal and sort of the business one. And that's what we're watching these videos from. And I keep my YouTube, especially because it's partially my personal one, I try to keep it very curated to not try to sell me regressive values. He's a friend of the small-brained American guy. I know you have heard of small-brained American. His video, India Sucks. Yeah. Yes. I believe I watched Saji Sharma do a video about it. It doesn't mean I can... Oliveira. I think I got his name right. Oh, man. I don't really care to get his name right because I don't really care that much about him. As an anthropologist, I'm hyper-aware and able to point out that the racism and how it flows down the algorithm and social media tracks. I would love to have you explain that to us at some point. I'd love to do a deep dive into that at some point, Maddie, because that, I think on a Saturday show, that sounds like the kind of thing that we could really dig into. Especially because it's one of those things that I worry about. You know, part of why I'm doing these Tuesday streams about looking at racial health disparities in the U.S. is because, I mean, part of why we do the whole thing really is because we're looking to give voice to, I don't want to claim to be the left or a leftist, although I do claim to be a Vidarian leftist. I want to give voice to an alternative to the right-wing pipeline that social media really is. I have watched anime. I don't watch a lot of anime. And I never really watched a whole lot of it. I think the last anime, the last two that I was working on, and I mean to go back to, oh yeah. See you later, Space Cowboy. I did just recently rewatch Cowboy Bebop. I think I might have watched up to the first or second episode of the second season of Dandadan. The Citizen Jane Zero. Okay. Citizen Kane of anime. Yeah, it really is. They knew it, too. They knew it when they gave us that opening scene. Trigun. I just finished going back through, not just, last year sometime, finished going back through the old Trigun and was going to start watching the new one. Your favorite is One Piece and Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga has changed me from the inside. So I'll tell you, politics aside, from what I hear about One Piece, it's really just a bunch of anti-fascism messaging. And somehow, I feel like that's exactly up my street. Anti-fascism and pirates. I'm there. The new one isn't as good? Okay. That's good to know. The new Trigun. I've been daunted by the size of One Piece and the fact that the only time I'm watching, fictional media at this point really is when I'm going to bed, when I'm falling asleep. I put on old British comedies to fall asleep to, because the droning of the British voices knocks me out like that. It's weirdly gross and dour. Ooh. That almost sounds like that might be appealing to me. Gross how? That's... because that, depending on the kind of gross, that may not work for me. Yeah, first anime I ever saw was Vampire Hunter D. And this was back when, to watch an anime, you had to have a friend who had a friend who had the anime, and then dubbed it over on VHS and smuggled it into school so that you could borrow it. It was... at least it was on VHS, not beta. It was Vampire Hunter D and Akira. And for the longest time, those were the only two anime I had any access to. It was not long after that they started playing Dragon Ball Z on American television. Actually, no, that's not true. There was an anime from when I was a child. From when I was very young. Well, very young. From when I was a kid. And we'd first left the hippie commune on Nickelodeon. Early in the morning, they were running this anime called, it's the Seven Cities of Gold. Something in the Search for the Seven Cities of Gold. And it was brilliant. It was great. If you can find it, it's worth looking up. The art was actually amazing. When I went back and rewatched it recently, the plot mostly holds together. Some of the dialogue is a little... and some of the character development is woefully neglected. But otherwise, it was a really, especially for the time, really solid show. Very educational, too. All right. before we get too much more sidetracked by anime, we were on a pregnant woman about to be completely not believed, and my guess is something awful happens. I'm guessing edema. Yeah. It's pretty, this is about to get depressing, folks.
How are structural racism and implicit bias affecting patient care here? These conversations are tough to have. Let's watch how two clinicians navigate this discussion.
This is a good opportunity for us to talk about how pregnancy-associated complications and mortality differ across races, and what we can do as providers to reduce these disparities. Has anybody ever talked with you about this before? This was never taught to me during my training, but it's important for us to be aware so that we can practice as equitably as possible. Let's spend a few minutes talking about this. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. The United States has the highest maternal mortality rate among developed countries, and this rate has doubled over the past 20 years. Approximately 700 women die in the U.S.
All right. And part of this, at least a part of this, is because of our laws surrounding abortions. This country is so backwards. This country is so backwards.
U.S. each year from pregnancy-related complications. The majority of these cases are felt to be preventable. The most common causes for pregnancy-related deaths are due to heart failure, pulmonary embolism, hypertension, and hemorrhage.
I didn't realize that the pregnancy-associated death rates were increasing. Is this true for all our patients across the board?
There are significant racial disparities. Black, American Indian, or Alaska Native women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications when compared to their white counterparts. Death rates are also higher for some Asian and Latina mothers.
Yes, I've heard about the disparities in care that Black mothers experience when they seek medical attention.
This was seen in the case of international tennis champion Serena Williams. Serena Williams has a...
I believe we discussed this in Inflamed. I believe this came up in Inflamed. If not, it came up in Sickened, the book we read before that. And the point they were making at the time is that doctors are aware of these things. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard that, people believe these things. But they don't internalize it as something that they're doing. A lot of medical professionals believe that Black women feel less pain. They don't believe that they believe that. They think that they are immune to that sort of racial bias. That sort of biased thinking in general. But those same doctors are just as willing to be dismissive of the weight gaining plateau and the swelling legs and the shortness of breath. Heart attack. That's what that was. So and what they're trying to show us now is, I suppose, how to have that conversation with a doctor as that doctor's superior. Because this is for Stanford students. And we're not Stanford students. Well, at least I'm not. I ain't smart enough to get close.
The history of pulmonary embolisms. In 2017, after the delivery of her first child by C-section, she developed shortness of breath and chest pain. Given her previous PE, she requested a CT scan of her lungs to evaluate for a new PE. But instead, she was told by her medical team that her pain medications were making her confused. She then developed severe coughing, which led to rupture of her stitches and a large hematoma that required surgery. Her physician eventually ordered a CT scan of her lungs, which confirmed the diagnosis of multiple new PEs.
Wow.
Slightly off topic, but not really. Pulmonary embolism is what took out my uncle. He had a hernia, got it operated on like a decade before, and something happened and a clot broke loose up to the lungs and he dropped. It was a full pulmonary embolism, and a full pulmonary embolism when the airway is completely blocked or the heart is completely blocked. Either way. Actually, it must have gone up to the heart, not the lungs. I don't remember. Could have been either. You have seconds. There's no real good amount of time between when it starts and how long you have to survive. These partial occlusion pulmonary embolisms, my dear friend, who is no longer with us, though we didn't know it was near the end of her life, but in the last 4 or 5 years of her life, she started having pulmonary embolisms, just one after another. And it was very painful, brought on heart attacks and strokes. And it was terrifying and awful. So, just to put that out there.
This story makes me consider how even her reputation, social and economic capital didn't protect her against doubt and implicit bias demonstrated by her medical team.
We don't know the exact details of what happened in Serena Williams' case, but the reality is that pregnancy-associated morbidity and mortality is disproportionately a problem that women of color face, even after adjusting for socioeconomic factors.
Mm-hmm.
College-educated black mothers are 5 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than college-educated white women, and still 1.6 times more likely to die than white women who have less than a high school education.
Why is there such a huge gap, even after adjusting for these factors?
The reasons for these racial disparities is multifactorial, but includes limited access to healthcare services, including prenatal care and postpartum care, due to geographical barriers, lack of health insurance, and inadequate healthcare facilities in marginalized communities. Almost half of the births in the United States are paid for by Medicaid, which covers low-income and vulnerable populations. Previously, Medicaid covered peripartum care up to 60 days after delivery. But many problems can come up after this time frame: postpartum depression and psychosis, wound healing issues, and hypertension. The Affordable Care Act expanded healthcare access for postpartum care to go up to 12 months in some states. But there are still a dozen states without Medicaid expansion. This results in families facing challenges in getting healthcare coverage for themselves and their new children. Their income may be too high to meet traditional Medicaid income thresholds, but they may also lack sufficient income to pay for coverage out of pocket. These burdens fall hardest on low-income families of color. Most of the states that failed to expand Medicaid are in the South, where approximately 50% of Black Americans live. Studies have shown
Virginia
that states
supposed
with
to be on
Medicaid
that list?
expansion have a 7% reduction in maternal mortality compared to states without Medicaid expansion.
Why was the reduction in maternal mortality in states that have expanded Medicaid still so small? Wouldn't addressing this social determinant of health be expected to level the field more?
Social determinants of health don't fully explain the higher rates of maternal morbidity and death in racial and ethnic minority mothers. implicit racial bias from healthcare providers affects how women receive care. Discrimination and stereotypes held by providers can result in suboptimal care, misdiagnosis, or even dismissal of Black women.
Paradoxus Beast, sleep well, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you much for hanging out. Hope to see you in the future.
Women's pain and concerns, leading to delayed or inadequate treatment.
That's disheartening, but also an opportunity for us to do better. What can we do as individual providers?
Because maternal health disparities are the effect of multiple layers of bias and racism, a multi-pronged approach is needed. As individual providers, we can promote health equity by identifying our own unconscious biases through unconscious bias training or by taking the implicit bias test. Recognizing that there are increased risks for maternal morbidity and mortality in Black, African American, Native American, and Latina patient populations, and advocate for closer follow-up in vulnerable populations. Also consider how social determinants of health, such as access to care, transportation, food, racial identity, and income inequity affect your patient's ability to stay healthy, and factor those things into your follow-up and treatment recommendations. So bring this back to our patient today. What do you want to do instead?
Well, what I learned was Black, American Indian, and Alaska Native mothers experience the highest rates of pregnancy-related complications. Even after adjusting for income and college education level, Black mothers have higher pregnancy-related mortality rates compared to white mothers. Structural factors such as limited access to health and implicit bias contribute to these maternal health disparities. I think we should go back and clarify with this patient why it's been so hard for her to receive peripartum care and get a better history on the symptoms that worry her and see if we need to do more of a workup.
I agree. Let's go see her together.
To learn more about the 5-minute moment for racial justice and other health equity resources, visit 5mmracialjustice.stanford.edu.
Wow. That was concise. There's a lot in that very, very concise video. Well, all right, we are going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we will watch Why Are Some U.S. Cities Declaring Racism a Public Health Crisis. And stick around. Thank you for being here. All right, I'm back, y'all. Thank you. Cheese and crackers, I feel better. So, no, that wasn't, I don't think that was AI. I forgot to check who the artwork was by, but the voice cast was all humans. And there at the end, when the doctor was talking, when the male doctor was talking, I could hear children in the background. I could hear it. It was not a very clean recording, audio recording. Although it could have been AI, because it's Stanford, they might have had that kind of money at the time. I have no idea, though. That is a valid question. And one we might look into at another time. I am 89% certain that none of my Be Right Back screen is AI. But I'm not going to say I'm 100% certain. I'm just mostly certain. Oh, this is SciShow. All right.
In July 2019, Milwaukee became the first city to declare racism a public health crisis. And almost 1 year later, dozens of other cities have begun to follow suit in response to the protests ignited after Minneapolis police killed George Floyd. If it seems surprising that we're talking about this on SciShow, well, there is science here. In addition to being a serious social issue, racism is also a serious challenge to public health. It affects...
Wow, how young he looks. Pre-cancer Hank. Just, man. It's just so weird to think that between this and now, he's had cancer and gotten over it. Well, gotten over it. Yeah.
The well-being of people who are subject to racism in every way, including physically. And this is what we're going to be talking about in particular here. In the US, there are significant health disparities between groups of different races, with some of the largest gaps being between white and black people. And it's maybe worth emphasizing that these racial health disparities are not rooted in biology. All humans are over 99.9% genetically identical, and even those differences that are in the 0.01% are not determined by race. So while people of different ancestry are occasionally predisposed to one disease or another, study after study has refuted the notion that this could account in any way for the health disparities we see today. And that has a lot to do with systemic racism, the type of racism that's built into the fabric of society through laws and structures that promote and sustain racial inequality. And it's important to note that systems of oppression can build upon each other to the point that they become hard to recognize, especially for the communities that benefit from them. And that's often the case, even though in countries like the US, they've been in place since the founding of the country. But whether or not we recognize it, systemic racism leads to racial disparities in practically everything that impacts well-being, like access to nutritious food, healthcare, and quality schools. It also leads to pervasive discrimination from law enforcement officers, clinicians, employers, and others, many of whom have been trained and educated in racist systems. And all these things have an enormous impact on people's health throughout their...
So it's probably good that we're taking a step back here, and I feel like this is taking a step back. You know, that we're a little more advanced than this. But it's probably good to take a step back and discuss, you know, what I mean when I say systemic racism. And this sort of more broad look at it.
Their whole lives, even when it is not obvious. But systemic racism is often compounded by individual discriminatory incidents, like when a person gets harassed or treated poorly at a restaurant or unfairly dismissed from a job. In situations like these, where a person is aware that they are being mistreated because of their race, that can also have a significant health toll. And that's mostly what we're going to focus on here. In 2019, a study in the journal Health Services Research looked at 29 literature reviews studies and meta-analyses on self-reports of discrimination, and it found that perceived racial discrimination is linked to mental and physical health in all kinds of ways. People who experience it have higher rates of sleep problems, cardiovascular disease, and premature births, as well as higher levels of stress hormones like cortisol. And systemic racism is part of that. Things like unequal access to resources and constant discriminatory treatment by institutions account for a lot of health disparities. But scientists don't think that's the whole story. That's because having discriminatory experiences is stressful, and stress can wreak all kinds of havoc on the body. Again, it's definitely hard to tease that apart from the stress of systemic racism, but some studies have tried to address that by getting really specific. Like in a 13-year study published in 2020, scientists looked specifically at how hypertension, or high blood pressure, related to rates of discrimination. The survey began in 2000 with a group of nearly 2,000 participants living in Jackson, Mississippi, who did not have hypertension at the time. At the beginning of the study, researchers conducted a standardized survey about racial and other forms of discrimination they'd experienced over the course of their lives. This included experiences they'd had in public places, at school or work, or in receiving services, housing, or other resources. Those who reported medium or high lifetime discrimination were up to 49% more likely to eventually develop hypertension. And it's not just Mississippi here. Other studies conducted in various geographic areas also suggest an association between lifetime racial discrimination and hypertension among specific ethnic and racial groups. These are just associations, so they can't prove that perceived incidents of discrimination cause hypertension. But there are plausible explanations for why that would happen. For example, experiments in which black subjects were exposed to racist content or situations have shown an immediate rise in blood pressure. Researchers think that the stress response of these situations triggers the body's fight or flight response, so the brain releases a surge of stress hormones which cause the blood vessels to constrict and the heart rate to jump, creating a spike in blood pressure. Combined with the forces of systemic racism, which come largely from institutions and policies, these experiences add up over time, and they've been linked with things like chronic hypertension and other health conditions. Researchers haven't figured out exactly how these chronic conditions develop, but some evidence suggests that the stress of racism repeatedly triggers the body's stress response system, known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And while we don't know exactly how, some researchers think that this repeated triggering can have long-term consequences. In addition to effects like these, racism may also bring about long-lasting changes in people's blood cells themselves. That's because the release of stress hormones can change the expression of genes in your cells. Gene expression happens when an enzyme reads the genetic information in a gene and uses that information to build a protein, and that protein produces a certain trait. But depending on a bunch of different factors, genes can either be expressed, where they build those proteins, or suppressed, when they don't. In this case, stress hormones can cause cells to express genes involved in inflammation. They can also make the cells suppress genes that help fight off viruses in order to divert energy to immediate threats. Unfortunately, while inflammation can be helpful for the body to heal from injury and fight off infections, when it's ongoing, it can do more harm than good. Like inflammation can cause swelling of airways, which makes people more susceptible to asthma attacks. It can also cause plaque lining the walls of blood vessels to break off and form blood clots, which can cause heart attacks and strokes. Now, racism, of course, isn't the only kind of stress that can cause these reactions in the body, but in 2019, the authors of a small study in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology looked specifically at the link between these effects and racism. They found that racial discrimination was associated with higher levels of inflammation in black versus white participants. And separate studies have found that inflammation caused by racism seems to play a role in many racial health disparities. The exact mechanisms aren't always clear, but it has been linked with disparities in overall cardiovascular health, preterm birth rate, and even chronic pain. You may sense a pattern here. The impacts of racial discrimination aren't just short-term. The experience of racism in childhood or adolescence can affect people in many different ways over the rest of their lives. Some evidence even suggests that those effects can be passed down. When someone is pregnant, their stress can take a toll on the developing fetus. Stress hormones can even pass through the placenta to the fetus. The result is potentially a vicious cycle. Health conditions in the womb compound lifelong effects of racism and can affect people's health for generations. But researchers have emphasized that while this type of intergenerational trauma is one factor, external factors like cycles of poverty caused by systemic racism take an even bigger toll. So from discriminatory treatment in systems to the effect of stress on cells, on every level, racism causes and perpetuates the massive health disparities in this country. And this is why, after centuries of racism, cities and counties all over the US are now declaring it a public health crisis. It's a small step, and governments aren't the only ones responsible for perpetuating or solving racism, but it is a step. Thank you for watching this episode of SciShow Psych, and thank you to our patrons who make videos like this possible. It takes a lot of people to make a SciShow video, and we couldn't do it without your support. If you'd like to find out more about how to support us, check out patreon.com/scishow.
Thanks, Hank. Complexly.
Dinner's ready. Mom?
So that felt like a very concise sort of Cliff Notes version of what my takeaways from Inflamed, the anatomy and Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice by Rupamari and Raj Patel. That felt very much like the Cliff Notes version of what I took away from that book. And I'm glad we went through that. That was very helpful. I think that's where we're going to call it in for today. After watching that video, just because it sort of gave us some, and regrounded us in what we'd been doing. And when we come back next week, we're going to watch Health Disparities in the Black Community, Past and Present, by PBS Origins. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Just Me Crystal. Thank you, Maddie Holmes. Thank you for Paradox's Beast. Thank you, all you lurkers. Much love, and stick around for the raid. That's what I was working on. Stick around for the raid. See you next time. And as they say around here, 2 up, 2 down, VA, double deuces. We're out, y'all.